The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
There's a couple very interesting things going on in today's Gospel for such a short Gospel, and one that we're familiar with. It is one where Jesus confronts the temple authority about the exchange of money and the selling of doves and items for the sacrifice. And Jesus is perplexed by this ongoing commerce that is going on in the house of God, in the temple, one of the most sacred places. And so Jesus is really not against, if you will, business. However, the business here is affecting, is extorting those who are most in need of the house of God, the poor. Actually, in order to even get to the point where you could get into the temple, where you could pray before the entrance to the Holy of Holies, one needed to give an offering. And if you were poor, or if you were destitute, especially if you were living on the streets, if you were a leper or outside the community, you would not be able to afford to access the house of God. And this is what Jesus is going at in today's gospel. He has no toleration for this barrier that's put in place before the very Holy of Holies, before the place of the temple, God's house. And so, as we know from other Gospels, what does he do? He overturns the marketplace, right, in the temple. We're told in other places in the Gospel he uses a whip to chase them out, to clear the way, if you will, for the people to have access to the temple, to the house of God. And so it is a imagery that maybe even for us who know that, as St. Paul has said, that our bodies are a temple too. You know, what are those obstructives, or there's those barriers that maybe we built in our lives that keep us from accessing the very heart and life of Jesus deep within us, of being our truest self, being that child of God. The second part of today's gospel, which is very, very important, is that even when he goes up against the temple and the temple authorities and the whole turning over the tables and chasing up the thieves, if you will, Jesus does tell us that now Jesus becomes the temple. Because there's nothing getting in the way of us hanging on to the very words of Jesus. In this word, where it says hanging on to his word, if you look at the Greek, hanging here means investing. It's interesting that, we're dealing with some business dealings in the temple, and Jesus would use the word investing. But people were free enough to invest or to give their life, to hang on to the word of Jesus. And thus, Jesus becomes the new house of God, the temple. And so we're invited to turn over the tables of our life, to change course maybe, and to really invest, to hang on to every word, to the word of God, to Jesus, the very temple of God's glory in our midst.